ballerina loved to dance, 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 and they called her ballerina.
Once there was a little girl who loved to dance more than anything in the whole world. Her name was Tina, and she lived in far-off France. Like other little girls all over the world, when Tina heard music, she would start to dance. She would stand on her toes, stretch out her arms gracefully, and begin to whirl round and round until her skirt made a merry whirling hoop around her. When the people of the village saw Tina, they would shout and sing, "Dance, la petite ballerina! Dance, little ballet dancer!"
Ballerina, little ballerina, ballerina, dancing on her toes. Ballerina, little ballerina, ballerina, round and round she goes. Dancing on her toes, round and round she goes. Pirouette, alouette, oh, alouette, gentille alouette, alouette, je fais plumerer.
Now, Tina was a very pretty little girl, and she knew exactly what she wanted to be when she grew up. She would sit in the garden every day and think to herself,
"When I grow up, I want to be a lovely ballerina. Just wait and see, someday I'll be a famous ballerina."
One day, Tina went to her mother and asked,
"Mother, can I go to Paris for the spring festival? There'll be dancing and singing. I'd like that more than anything else in the world."
You cannot go alone, my daughter. But if your older brother Jack will take you, then you may go.
Off ran Tina to tell her brother Jack the good news. She found him sleeping in the hayloft, and she woke him up by singing this little French song.
Frère Jacques, dormez-vous, dormez-vous, sonnez les matines, ding dong ding, ding dong ding.
Are you sleeping? Are you sleeping, Brother John? Brother John, morning bells are ringing, morning bells are ringing, ding dong ding, ding dong ding.
The very next morning, Tina and her brother Jack set out for the spring festival in Paris. As they walked down the road, children from all the neighboring villages joined them.
We're off to see Paris, la belle Paris. There's lots of things to see in gay Paris. There'll be dancing everywhere. There'll be music in the air. We're off to see Paris, la belle Paris.
It wasn't long before Tina and her brother Jack reached Paris. Oh, how gay and colorful everything was. The festival had already started. There were clowns, jugglers, and musicians roaming the streets. People were singing and laughing everywhere.
Brother Jack, this is the most wonderful sight I have ever seen. Please take me to the ballet theater now. I can't wait to see all the beautiful ballerinas dancing on their toes.
When Tina and Jack reached the ballet theater, the orchestra was tuning up. Then everything became very quiet, and the music began.
See the dance they do, all the little ballerinas. See the dance they do, round and around upon their toes.
Suddenly the music stopped, and a man walked out on the big stage. "Attention, everyone! I wish to announce that the star ballerina cannot dance tonight, and so the ballet cannot continue." Just then Tina jumped up from her seat and cried,
Wait, sir. I will dance in her place.
"You dance in the star ballerina's place? But you are such a little girl." And then, before anyone could stop her, Tina ran onto the stage and began to dance.
Round and round she goes, dancing, dancing on her toes. Tina the ballerina, the belle of gay Paris. Twirling, twirling in a spin, whirling, whirling like the wind. Tina the ballerina, the belle of gay Paris.
Tina danced and danced till she could dance no more. The crowds cheered and shouted. They crowned her queen of the festival. From that day on, Tina the little ballerina was famous throughout the land.
Tina the ballerina, the belle of gay Paris.
12 lovely princesses, beautiful princesses.
Dance, 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 princesses, wear out your shoes, princesses. Someday you'll lose your heart.
Someday you'll find romance. But till that day when love comes your way, beautiful princesses, dance, dance, dance.
In the small French village there once lived a handsome young orphan named Michel. One day he fell asleep in the wood, and in a dream a beautiful golden lady appeared and said,
Go to the castle Beloil, and you shall marry a princess.
That very night, Michel packed his few belongings in a bundle, said goodbye to all his friends, and set out to find the castle Beloil. He had no trouble reaching it. Everyone in France knew of the castle, and also of the 12 beautiful princesses living there. They told him also of the strange fact that though all 12 were locked in their room every night with 3 bolts on each door, every morning their satin shoes would be completely worn out, and no one knew why. And the Duke of Beloil grew so concerned, he proclaimed,
Whoever discovers how my 12 daughters' shoes get so worn out may choose any one of them for a wife.
When Michel reached the castle, he went straight to the garden and asked for work. That night, many young princes came to try their luck. They watched all night beside the princess's door. But next morning, they were gone, and no one knew what had become of them. And to add to the mystery, all the princess's shoes were worn right through the soles. When Michel brought them their morning bouquet, the princesses took them without even looking at him except for Lena, the youngest. She smiled and said,
Thank you. What is your name?
Michelle, my princess, may I be so bold as to ask yours?
Take your flowers and come along, Lena. Father wants to see us about the worn-out shoes, no doubt.
Michel returned to the gardens.
Lena, what a beautiful princess. Oh, I'm so tired. I'll just lie here under this lilac bush and rest.
Michel fell sound asleep. Again, in his dreams, the golden lady appeared and said,
When you awake, you will find some laurel seeds, a golden rake, a golden pail, and a silken towel. Plant the seeds, rake them with the golden rake, water them with the pail, and dry them with the towel. When they have grown to the size of a maid of 12, ask them for whatever you wish, and the laurels will give it to you.
When Michel awoke, everything was as the golden lady predicted. Michel said,
Make me invisible so I can learn how the princesses wear out their shoes.
That night, when the princesses retired to their chambers, Michel followed them. They didn't see him, because the laurel had truly made him invisible.
Another night, another pair of shoes.
The eldest clapped her hands 3 times, and the hidden trapdoor opened. Down a secret staircase they all went, with the invisible Michel right behind them. They walked through many passageways, through a beautiful wood where all the leaves were spangled with either silver, gold, or diamonds. Finally they reached a large lake. On its shore, 12 rowboats were waiting. At the oar sat the missing young man. Each princess entered the boat, and they got underway. Michelle slipped quietly into the water and clung to Princess Tina's boat. On the opposite shore stood a huge castle. When they landed, the princesses took the young man's hands and all entered the castle. Michelle followed. No sooner did they arrive than all began to dance and dance and dance. It was obvious that the princesses loved dancing more than anything in the world. The young man had all been drugged by the princesses into forgetting all but their love for dancing. So they all danced till their shoes were completely worn out. Then the eldest princess spoke up.
Enough! It's late. We must return to the castle.
The next morning, when Michelle brought their bouquets, he said,
You must be weary after all that dancing.
Who told you? How did you find out? Will you tell Father?
No, I will not tell your father.
Course he won't. He's smitten by our little Lena. Here, Michelle, join us in a glass of lilac wine. No, don't drink it, Michelle. I would rather be just a gardener's wife than see you drugged and without sense.
Michelle threw the goblet on the floor and fell at Lena's feet.
My beautiful princess, you do love me.
You know I do. But hurry. Let us tell Father the truth while my sisters are still in a state of confusion.
When the Duke learned how his doctor's shoes had been worn out, he called them to his chambers and said,
You will break the spell you cast on those poor young men. As for you, Lena, you shall not become a gardener's wife. I appoint Michel Prince of Beaulair Castle and command you both to live happily ever after.
12 lovely princesses, beautiful princesses, love to dance. Until one day a prince came their way and taught them to love romance.
Do you believe that mice can talk, fish can fly, trees can walk?
Do you believe that fairy tales are true? If you do, lucky you, you will never grow old. And you'll get to listen to the story that we have for you. Oh, there once was a frog who became a prince. No other frog has done that since. We're convinced. If you are curious, we suggest you settle back and listen while we tell you the rest.
Once upon a time, very long ago, there lived a king who had many beautiful daughters. His youngest was truly the loveliest of all, but unfortunately, she was also the most irresponsible. She would often neglect her duties to go out and play with her most valued possession, a small golden ball. One day, while playing her favorite game, she threw the ball into the air, but instead of coming down into her hands, it hit a tree limb and bounced into the palace well.
Oh dear, now what shall I do? That well is so deep.
Maybe I can be of assistance.
Who spoke? Why, it's a frog. Now what can you do, my ugly friend?
I can get your ball for you, but first, what will you give me?
I'll give you my jewels, silks, rings, even the golden crown I wear.
What good would all those things do me? I'll tell you what, if you promise to love me and let me be your constant companion in everything you do, I'll get your ball for you.
Oh yes, anything you wish. Just get my ball for me.
In a flash, the frog jumped into the well, and in a matter of minutes, he returned holding the golden ball in his mouth. The princess ran into the house.
Stop, pick me up. I can't run as fast as you.
But it was no use. The princess had no intention of bringing such an ugly creature everywhere she went. That night at supper, someone knocked at the palace door.
You made a promise.
Seeing it was the frog sitting outside her door, the princess slammed the door shut.
Who was it, my dear?
No one, Father. Just the wind.
Suddenly, through an open window, they all heard the frog crying.
Youngest daughter, let me in. Keep your promise, that is all. Give me what you said I'd win if I brought back your golden ball.
The king asked his daughter what the frog meant. She told him all that had taken place.
Thou art a princess, and what thou hast promised thou must fulfill.
But he is such an ugly frog.
Silence! I order you to go and let him in.
The princess opened the door, and in hopped the huge frog. He jumped onto the princess's lap and said,
Give me a piece of your gingerbread.
How revolting. Share my food with you?
Daughter, remember your promise.
Yes, Father. Here you are, Sir Frog.
So it was all that evening. Every time the frog asked for something, the king would order her to keep her word. That night at bedtime, she placed the frog in a tiny box at the foot of her bed.
Oh, no. Not for me. I'm sleeping in your bed. Now pick me up or I'll call your father.
The princess picked up the frog and threw him as hard as she could onto her pillow. Lo and behold, the moment his head touched the pillow, the frog turned into a tall, handsome prince with beautiful, kind eyes.
Oh, my gracious.
Fear not, sweet princess. I will not harm you. A wicked witch turned me into a frog because I refused to marry her ugly niece. Only by resting my head on the pillow of a beautiful princess could I break her evil spell.
Will you ever forgive me for being so cruel to you?
There is nothing to forgive. Come, let us go to your father. I wish to ask him for your hand in marriage.
Naturally, the king gave his consent, and from that day forth, the frog prince and his lovely princess were very happy.
And that is the story of the frog who became a prince. And no other frog has ever done it since. We're convinced. Why so glum? Why so blue? Lovely princess, what can be wrong with you? Don't you know, long ago there lived a princess who wouldn't smile like you. But when she learned to laugh, all her dreams came true.
It was a very sad time in the kingdom of Joyelle. Old King Merryvale was at his wit's end. His youngest and loveliest daughter, Princess Anne, never smiled.
My daughter, why are you always so sad?
I don't really know, dear Father. But for some reason I've found little humor in any of the people I've met, and even less in the sights I've seen.
I shall issue a proclamation. The first young man who makes you smile shall have half my kingdom and your hand in marriage.
But, Father, I don't...
No buts. It's time you were married. And besides, any man who can bring joy to your face should be worthy of your love, my dear.
At that time, on a huge farm not far from the palace, there lived a poor workman named Eric. Every day Eric would work from sunup to sunset, sweeping the courtyard, taking the cattle to pasture, milking all the cows, and doing all the many other necessary chores. When payday came, the rich farmer, a wise and just man, said,
Here, Eric, open this purse and take as much as you like.
I shall take but 3 coins. With your permission, I'd like to go into the city and see all the sights. Then, not knowing exactly where to go, he decided to follow a group of young men. They led him to the king's palace. At the window sat the unsmiling Princess Anne. And to Eric, it seemed she was staring right at him. He was so overcome by her beauty and so tired from his long journey, he fainted and fell face first into a huge puddle of water in the palace courtyard. Just then, up swam the catfish, followed by the mouse, and behind him, the beetle. They all tried to help him up. Now, picture if you can, a full-grown man, wet and muddy, floundering about in a puddle, with a catfish pulling on one trouser leg, a mouse on the other, and a tiny beetle trying to hold his head out of the water. And this is exactly what the princess saw beneath her window.
Never have I seen such a ridiculous situation. Oh, Father, look!
The king was so delighted to see his daughter, near bursting with laughter. He shouted to his palace guard,
Bring me that young man, whoever he is, and then spread the word throughout the kingdom that there's to be a wedding.
when they brought Eric before the king and Princess Anne, and she saw how handsome and kind he was, she gladly consented to the marriage, and they all lived happily ever after.
Now you know it was so. The princess who wouldn't laugh was always blue. And when she learned to laugh, all her dreams came true. Rapunzel, Rapunzel, you love Rapunzel, the girl with the hair of gold. Don't miss a word, you'll be glad that you heard the story that never grows old.
Once upon a time, a man and his wife received the happy news that they were going to have a child of their very own. From the back of their house, the woman could see a beautiful garden full of flowers and good things to eat, especially a plant called rampion. But the garden belonged to a wicked witch. One day, the woman said to her husband,
If I don't get some of that rampion to eat, I know I shall die.
This worried him, and that night he climbed over the wall into the witch's garden to get her some rampion. But just as he touched it, the witch appeared.
How dare you steal from my garden? You'll pay for this!
Oh, please be merciful. My wife will die if you can't have some of your rampion.
Then take as much as you like, on one condition. You must give your first child to me.
The frightened man agreed, and when the baby was born, the witch took it home and said,
Because my rampion brought you to me, I name you Rapunzel.
Rapunzel had the most beautiful golden hair you ever saw. So long it could reach the ground. When the witch called, she would twist her hair around a hook and let it fall out the window, and the witch would climb up on it. One day, some years later, the king's son was riding through the woods when he heard a voice singing,
Someday, somewhere, someone will come my way, and I love him only, never be lonely, some wonderful someday.
The voice comes from that tower, but I can't get in. There's no door.
Just then he saw the witch come up and call,
Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair!
and he hid and watched as Rapunzel lowered her hair and the witch climbed up. The next day, when it was getting dark, the prince went to the tower and called out,
Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair.
She let down her hair and he climbed up. At first Rapunzel was frightened.
Oh, don't be afraid, Rapunzel. I loved you from the moment I heard your song. Come with me and be my wife.
He was so gentle and kind, Rapunzel said,
Oh, I will go with you, but how will I get out?
I will bring silk rope each time I come here, and we'll make it into a ladder.
And he did come back to her each evening. The old witch, who would come in the daytime, knew nothing of this until one day Rapunzel, without thinking, said,
Why does it take you so long to climb up? The king's son climbs up much faster. Oh, you wicked child. I thought I had hidden you from all the world. You have deceived me.
In a great rage, she seized Rapunzel's beautiful hair, snatched up a pair of scissors, and cut it off. Then she hid Rapunzel deep in a wild forest and returned to the tower.
Now to tie Rapunzel's hair to the window like this. And what a surprise I'll have for that whippersnapper of a prince.
That night when the prince came, he called out.
Rapunzel! Rapunzel! Let down your hair!
Down came the hair and up climbed the prince. But instead of Rapunzel, there stood the witch.
Aha! You came for your lover, but you will never see her again.
The prince, beside himself with grief, jumped out of the tower. Though he wasn't killed, the thorns he fell on scratched his eyes, and for many years he wandered blind from land to land, until one day as he stumbled through a forest, he heard a voice singing.
Someday, somewhere, someone will come my way.
Rapunzel! Rapunzel, it's you!
Rapunzel ran to him and, weeping with joy, put her arms around him.
My prince, my beloved.
And as she spoke, 2 teardrops fell on his eyes, and suddenly he cried,
I can see! I can see again!
and he took her home to his kingdom, where they lived long and happily ever after.
There was once a very rich merchant who had 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls. The 3 girls were all very lovely, particularly the youngest, who was so very beautiful. Everyone called her Beauty. Beauty was also a sweet, even-tempered young lady. But her 2 sisters were so selfish, vain, and ill-tempered that even their father found it difficult not to dislike them. Because they were very rich as well as beautiful, many young merchants hoped to marry the 3 girls. The 2 eldest sisters always said no, they wouldn't think of marrying anyone below a duke or an earl at least. But Beauty always thanked them politely for the honor and told them,
I'm much too young to marry. Besides, I would like to spend a few more years at home with my dear father.
One day, by some unlucky accident, the merchant suddenly lost all his fortune. He sadly summoned all his children and told them of his misfortune.
My children, we must give up this grand house and find a tiny cottage somewhere. All of us will have to work now that my fortune is gone.
Work? What do we know of work? We will do nothing of the sort. There are many young merchants who wish to marry us. We'll accept the best offer and stay right here.
Shame on you, too. Do you think Father planned it this way?
A year passed. Then one day the merchant received a letter informing him that one of his richest ships, which he thought was lost, had just come into port. When he told his children the news, they were all delighted.
I must go to the city tomorrow and find out just how much treasure my ship has brought. Now, what shall I bring back for you, my daughters?
Dresses, gowns, hats, jewelry, silks, shoes, and perfumes.
What about you, dear Beauty? Isn't there something you would like?
You are so kind, Father. There's nothing I really need. But if you could bring me back a rose, a red one, I should be most grateful.
The merchant kissed all his children goodbye and set out on his journey. When he reached his ship, he found that the ship's captain, a thieving rogue, had sold all the treasure and fled with the money. The poor old man began the long trek back to the farm. even poorer than when he started. Rain began to fall, and then it turned to snow. Before too long, the merchant discovered he had lost his way. All at once, he saw a bright light in the distance, and running as fast as his tired old legs would carry him, he came to the most beautiful castle he'd ever seen. He found a huge table set with one fork, one knife, one spoon, one plate, and one wine goblet. The merchant softly murmured a prayer of thanks to his good fairy and began to eat. When he had finished, he sat by the open fireplace. Before too long, he fell sound asleep. Next morning, he awoke to find himself in the courtyard of the castle.
Now, how on earth did I get here? Oh, what beautiful roses! I'm sure my good fairy won't mind if I pick one for Beauty.
At that very moment, he heard a loud noise, and there coming towards him was a beast so horrible looking, he almost fainted with fear.
You ungrateful man! I provide you with shelter and food, and in return you try to steal my roses. For that you shall die this very day.
Oh, sir, I humbly beg your pardon. I did not think it would hurt anyone to gather a single rose for one of my daughters. Please, do not kill me, my lord.
I am not a lord, I am a beast, and false compliments will avail you not. However, there is a way you can save yourself. Go home, and if one of your daughters is willing to die in your place, you don't have to return, but if not, give me your promise that in 10 days you will come back.
So he gave his promise.
Good! You may leave whenever you like, and just so you don't return home empty-handed, take this chest of gold back with you, and, oh yes, take whatever roses you like.
The old man took the chest and one red rose and left the palace. Late next day, he arrived home. After showing his children the gold and giving Beauty her rose, he told them of his amazing adventure.
I shall spend a few days with you, and then I must return.
No, Father, that you will not do. I shall return in your stead.
On the 9th day, she made ready to go to the palace of the beast. When she arrived at the palace, the beast was waiting. Though she was terrified at the sight of him, she tried not to show her fear.
What is your name?
Beauty, sir. I mean,
You can say it, Beast. That is what I want to be called. Did you come of your own accord?
yes.
Then you're a very brave and good girl, and I am most obliged to you.
In the weeks that followed, Beauty found that the beast had no intention of killing her at all. On the contrary, he gave her everything a young lady could wish for. Every night he would sit by the fire and have Beauty play for him.
Are you still afraid of me?
No, Beast. Not at all.
Do you think me very ugly?
I cannot tell a falsehood. Yes, you are very ugly. But I also know you are very kind and good.
Tell me now, dear Beauty. Will you marry me?
Again, I cannot tell you a lie. I love your gentle and kind heart, but I cannot marry you.
For 6 months, Beauty lived happily in the palace of the beast. One night after supper, she began to cry.
What is wrong? Have I said something to offend you?
Oh, no, dear Beast. It's just that I miss my family so. I think my heart shall break.
I would rather break mine. You can return to your home tomorrow, and I will stay here and die.
Oh, no, kind Beast. I like you too well to be the cause of your death. I promise I will return to you in a week.
The beast gave her a golden ring and said,
You shall find yourself at your home tomorrow morning, but mind you, Don't forget your promise. At the end of a week, you have but to rub this ring 3 times, and you shall be returned here.
When she awoke, she found herself at her father's house. What a happy reunion she and her father had. On the 12th night, she dreamed she was in the garden of the palace, and that her beast lay dying because she had broken her promise. She awoke in a great fright.
Oh, how wicked I am to behave so selfishly to one who has been so kind. I could never forgive myself if he should die because of me.
Quickly, she rubbed the golden ring once, twice, 3 times, and suddenly she found herself back at the palace. She called to the beast, but there was no answer. She searched every room, but there was no sign of him anywhere. Then, remembering her dream, she rushed to the garden and found him lying apparently dead by the fountain.
Oh, my poor darling beast. Don't die. Please don't die. I thought it was only pity I felt for you, but I know now it was really love.
The moment Beauty spoke these words, the palace suddenly lit up, and bells began ringing everywhere in the kingdom. Poor Beauty didn't hear them. She was crying so. When she looked up, the beast was gone. In his place stood a tall, handsome young prince.
Thank you, my darling Beauty, for freeing me from the accursed spell.
But where is my poor beast? I want only him, no one else.
I am he. A wicked witch changed me into a beast and forbade me to tell anyone till a beautiful maid consented to marry me. You alone, dear Beauty, judged me not by my looks or talents, but by my heart alone. Take it then, and all that I possess. It shall be yours forever.
The prince and Beauty were married and lived happily ever after.